Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a piquant Charles Coulombe.
Piquant?
Yeah.
You mean like spicy?
Really spicy, yeah.
You mean like fiery?
Yes.
No, I didn't start the fire.
Ooh.
But it's been burning since the world's been turning.
Yeah.
I didn't light it, but I tried to fight it.
We didn't discuss this pre-show, but this was one of the things I wanted to show, a YouTube comment from Suburban Catholic. How did Charles get through the story of Bernie Goats without mentioning that Bernie Goats is featured in We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel?
Well, it was a tough call, I have to say. Because as you know, Billy Joel lyrics do, at least recently, get pride of place here at Tumblr House. Why, I have no idea. But, it's, I mean, as you know, when I was young, we lived in New York. And I remember from a town known as Oyster Bay, Long Island, rode a boy with a six-pack in his hand. All right, stop. We won't do Billy Joel. Besides which, although New York is very much on my mind, as is spicy food, but not for the same reason. Because, first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, I went down to a restaurant in Vienna called Doña Irma. And after the lady who runs it, Doña Irma, who is a Mexican lady from Chiapas. And it is a Mexican restaurant. The only authentic Mexican restaurant I have found in this part of the world in the past 3 years. And as you know, I haven't been home since February of 2020, thanks to Aunt COVID. I have not had any Mexican food in all that time. And tonight, you're talking about piquant. Oh, heavens. Oh, heavens. It began with a delicious plate of nachos con carne, drenched in meat, cheese, and peppers with a salsa. That was followed by a huge bowl of chicken pozole. And that was followed by 5 assorted tacos with various meats ranging from carnitas to cochinitas. Oh. And when I waddled out of there, my tummy was the happiest it's been in months. I love Mexican food, ladies and gentlemen. But while my stomach might have been there, my mind was far away. Because today I have been watching an old 1957 movie starring Bob Hope, Bo James, with Hope in a rare dramatic role, playing Jimmy Walker, the mayor of New York in the late 20s, early 1930s, the mayor who knew how to have a good time. Ah, Jimmy Walker. What an age that was. New York in the 20s, when the old New York graphic, called the pornographic by its detractors, although it was very tame by our standards, had columnists like Walter Winchell and Ed Sullivan, my own grandfather, and lots of interesting people. New York in the 20s. What a place to be. Unlike New York today. I mean, all right, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Walker, de Blasio. Really? No question. And let's move up a level, shall we? Yeah, let's. Al Smith, the Brown Derby. Cuomo? No.
Al Smith was governor of New York?
Yeah, before he ran for president, you bet.
Oh, cool.
And let's take it one step further. Herbert Hoover, Joe Biden.
No contest.
No. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, what does this show us? What about the progress we've made in 100 years? Well, indeed. Indeed. No more speakeasies, a few smokeasies. That's about it. I mean, I don't know. It really forced me to stop and think. Can you imagine having a mayor of New York who had made himself famous 15 years before by writing a popular song?
I mean, we've had weirder things here in California, but okay.
Yeah, we're talking about New York, not California.
Okay, New
I mean,
York.
could you imagine De Blasio contributing anything to anybody, let alone the arts? I don't think so. What a moron.
Okay.
Just an utter buffoon.
Alrighty, Charles.
I don't want to say I don't like him.
But
I don't.
oh,
So there. Of course, you know, though, that our state of California, given its status as the second New York, does its best to come rushing up. So we have Newsom to counter Cuomo and Garcetti to counter de Blasio.
that's right.
And what do de Blasio and Garcetti have in common?
I have no idea what.
They both have Italian names, and they're neither of them really Italian.
That should tell you something.
Yeah, it should. It should. Phonies. Utter phonies. However, on a happier note, and there's always a happier note if you squint and know where to look, I was treated to a lot of really good 1920s music in that film, including Someone to Watch Over Me, and of course, I'll Take Manhattan. Boy, I love that song. I have to admit, I really rather miss New York despite everything. You know, I really do. But I don't miss it that much. Somehow it's difficult to miss anywhere when you're in Vienna. Oh, and speaking of which, speaking of missing things, this came to me. My brother sent this to me. This is the history of Musso and Frank's, my favorite restaurant in beautiful downtown Hollywood. While we're speaking of nostalgia. But wait, there's more. Another friend of ours, Dan Devine in beautiful New York State, sent us a wonderful, wonderful living testament to one of the greatest temples of commerce ever built in the United States. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am referring to that impressive place, that center of bohemian thought and right thinking and good living and high drinking and stuff. The Paramus Mall in beautiful Paramus, New Jersey. Yes, indeed. And let me tell you something. I've gotten a lot of flack for my supposed anti-Jersey bias. It's not true. And I proved myself this past week on my Facebook page by publishing not one, not two, but 3 different lists of important Jersey restaurants. Is it not so?
You're just sucking up to your fan base in Jersey.
What do you mean sucking up to my fan base? Listen, the Garden State is there for all who wish it. I mean, come on, think of Fort Lee, New Jersey. Think of Hoboken.
Yeah, let's think of these places.
Bayonne, Weehawken.
Yeah, those are old places.
They are. Englewood, New Jersey.
There's another
Summit,
one.
Morris Plains.
How about that?
Yeah, see? Perth Amboy. But above all, let us never forget Paramus and the beautiful Paramus Mall. I do have bad news for those of you who are true blue Paramus Mall fans. And that is, at some unknown point in the past 40 years, the Wurlitzer Organ Store closed.
We're devastated over that.
You should be. Do you know what a center of musical exploration the Wurlitzer Organ Store and the Paramus Mall used to be?
I can't even imagine.
No, I'll bet you can. Do you know how many childhood prodigies came out of that place?
I can't even count.
Well, I don't know either, but I'm sure there were tons.
All right. Seems fitting that we segue into the memes of production.
Nationalize the memes of production.
For the common good. All right. One of our patrons now self-identifies as Andrew from New Jersey. So,
speaking of Jersey.
So everything he submits from here on in, we're going to be calling him Andrew from New Jersey. So let's start with this one.
The Garden State strikes back.
He sent in a meme. So we've got a firm handshake with two men. One representing Magyars, the other people from New Jersey. And they're shaking hands to combat Charles's bigotry.
Hey, I've got nothing against either Jerseyites, who, as you point out, are a huge part of my fan base, or Magyars, who are also a huge part of my fan base. So it's unfair to say I'm against either of them.
All right. Andrew submitted a follow-up meme in that same vein. Magyars uniting once again with people from New Jersey to eat horse meat.
Does he provide any explanation to that?
Yes. He says, although Connor and I don't know each other, he is welcome in New Jersey anytime. We too have something akin to horse meat here. It's called Callahan's hot dogs. I think you'll feel right at home.
Oh, God, help us all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Callahan's hot dogs are made as they have been made for decades by the D'Amelio family of Fort Lee, New Jersey. So this provides me a chance to give a shout out to Dan D'Amelio there in Fort Lee. Dan, I'm very sorry the past couple of years have been the way they've been because they had due to the COVID and construction and so forth, the new store they were going to open, they didn't open. But 2021 is the year that Callahan's Hot Dogs retakes its place. You're going to open a new restaurant. You're going to get those hot dogs out there, horse meat or no. And I'll tell you, Fort Lee not only boasts Callahan's hot dogs, it has the largest concentration of Koreans on the Northeast coast. So there. You thought it was all Koreatown in Wilshire, didn't you, Mr. Franchini? Well, let me tell you something. Fort Lee has a ton of Koreans.
I stand corrected.
Yes, indeed. From now on, when you think of Fort Lee, I want you to think of Korean barbecue.
Good. I love Korean barbecue.
You love Fort Lee then. See? And you could possibly have a Callahan's hot dog barbecued in Korean style for you. Now, that would be something.
That would be something.
See? Big thoughts from big thinkers.
Okay. All right. That's it for the memes this week. Now...
Nothing else? No, you're not going to run the live footage from Paramus Mall?
No, we're not going to run the live footage from Paramus Mall, I'm sorry to say. We're going to do something more important, Charles. Okay, something infinitely more important.
Than the Paramus Mall?
Absolutely, especially the Paramus Mall. We are going to plug some books.
Oh, well, all right. I'm all for that.
All right. So, what to start with? We will start first. Well, what was that, Charles? You have anything?
I was going to suggest the WPA Guide to New Jersey.
No. That's not available on the Tumblr House bookstore, Charles, so that's anathema. All right.
And it came out in 1938, so it doesn't feature the Paramus Mall.
Well, okay, so it's wholly deficient then. Okay, so we sold out of all of our integralism books. That entire box that we bought. Thank you for everyone who bought. It's really incredible. But
are more being ordered, or is it a limited
more
supply?
Are being ordered. I was really worried because the outfit I was working with, I wasn't too impressed with the condition of the cover. The whole book was fine, but the covers were a tiny bit scuffed, and I didn't want that again. But it worked out the kinks with them, and they said that it's going to be taken care of, and we're going to get a new shipment in. So I will kind of make them available for pre-order on the website, so you can order them, and we should get them in the beginning of June. So integralism. We talking with some patrons. They really love the feature on the Tumbler House website that on the front page where we have the latest releases. So the newest books coming out from various presses. They kind of use it as a way to stay current with what's coming out in the Catholic book market. So you don't have to go to Ignatius, you don't have to go to Tan, you don't have to go to Sophia. You can just see what's going on through, because we get all of them, right? So you just go to tumblerhouse.com, latest releases, click it, and it will, list the order in which these books were added to the bookstore. In 2021, the past few months, I've added a lot of books to the bookstore, most particularly from Angelico Press. I've added probably about 150 books. And they have a very eclectic selection of really interesting books that Sophia, Tan, and Ignatius don't really have they don't really cover. And I'll give you an example of kind of the flavor of Angelico. Oh, so one example is Vulnerary of Christ, which we've promoted. This one, From Christendom to Americanism and Beyond, The Long Jagged Trail to a Postmodern Void, by Thomas Stork, who's actually a famous writer. He's a very similar worldview, if I'm not mistaken.
He's a very exciting writer. I've enjoyed his work.
Yeah, so Thomas Stork in general is really high up on my to-read list, and this seems like something our fan base would be very interested in. So that's one example of Angelic. Another one, Social Theories of the Middle Ages by B. Jarrett. So I think,
he was a monk, Dom B. Jarrett, who was a Benedictine, and a great friend of Chesterton and Belloc and people like that. He's from that era.
Yeah.
Very, very, very much worth reading.
So, so we have a lot of those types of books investigating medieval thought, and just a whole lot of really other interesting books. One of the other bestsellers, I think, is Mental Disorders and Spirituality, how those things combined. That's one of the really hot sellers. So kind of interesting topics, very eclectic mix. Angelico Press is really going places. In my opinion, they're going to be, right up there with the other big three. Some other worthy mentions in our bookstore, which will be on the latest releases, is Etienne Gilson. Philosophy. Gilson. Etienne Gilson. Yeah, The Philosophy of St. Bonaventure. Now, Clooney Media is doing a lot of republishing of old-time books, and this, I couldn't be happier. Tumbler House, I wanted to publish this for Tumbler House, but I couldn't do it because I couldn't navigate like who owns the copy right now, and the book was such an endeavor. There's so much to add to it that it's quite a huge project. So I'm really happy that someone took it up, figured out all the problems, and published it. This is such... Etienne Gilson he used to be a really big name. I was talking to my mom about him, and they studied him in college. And now no one even hears of him really anymore. So it's kind of shocking that they let so many of his books go out of print for so long,
Well, that's because he fell into disfavor after the council. People didn't like him anymore. They were busy with Teilhard de Chardin and Karl Rahner. Big brains. So, there's a shift in Catholic publishing, I'm happy to say. Clooney Media is run by, I think, two young gentlemen in their 20s, and they're doing a lot of wonderful things. They've got a lot more that we're going to be at, but right now I'm really just excited about Etienne Gilson. They've also got The Christian Philosophy of St. Augustine. And they have a lot more Gilson books. So check that out. These are all on my to read list. There's just so much. And if you order over, or if you order two of any of these things, it'll be over $25, and you know what that means.
We all know what that means, Charles. That means free shipping, because there's free shipping on all orders over $25.
But what about handling? Do they have to pay for that?
Absolutely no fee for handling. Free, completely 100% free. But a
So
couple
it's free
caveats.
for shipping and for handling.
That's right. But I'm sorry, we don't do CODs. And it is void where prohibited. So you have to watch out for that.
All right, now while supplies last.
Operators are standing by.
Be the first on your block.
Not an actor. All right.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. Send in a book review, get $5 off on top of that.
Order today, and you get this.
Free slicer dicer. Yeah, so.
Free to the first 7 callers.
I mean, it's a steal of a deal. You know, I actually have I feel guilty sometimes, you know, because it's like I'm teaching people how to steal and to take advantage of others, you know.
But getting free slicer dicers?
No, just the deals, you know. I mean, it's so cheap. I mean, free shipping and handling, and then $5 off on top of that. I mean, they're robbing us blind, to be honest. But you know.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it pays chewing through the straps in the morning, I swear.
We're teaching people how to hustle, and these are life skills. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, the fast shuffle, you know, the big picture. That's what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, not gratuitous, essential plug for become a patron as low as $5 a month. We had a wonderful pre-show, hour long. It was really fun. Some laughs, some education, very well balanced.
And the truth was told about the Thanksgiving decorations in the Tumbler House Tower. It was revealed.
That's right. Yeah, the truth.
No,
the secret.
Don't say.
I'm not going to say anything. Patrons only. It's patrons only.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know who's responsible for the beautiful Thanksgiving decorations all around the Tumbler House Tower every year, you'll find out if you tune into the pre-show. But you need to be a patron.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do it. First question is from Zane.
Hello, Zane.
What role will Catholic education, particularly higher education, play in the restoration of traditional Catholicism? There seems to be a growing number of traditionally minded Catholic academics who are becoming popular as political and cultural commentators. For example, Patrick Deneen, the head of the political science department at Notre Dame, is a borderline integralist, and his book, Why Liberalism Failed, is quite popular. Should young people who are passionate about their Catholic faith consider a career in academia?
Well, they should, especially if they've got talent for it. On the one hand, you know, most of academia today is garbage, but it won't necessarily stay that way. And certainly there's been a proliferation in recent years of both small Catholic colleges that are faithful and Catholic academies. You know, if there's anything we really need, it's decent secondary education for Catholics. So sure, have at it if you've got the abilities. Just remember, you're not going to make a fortune at it.
Right. All right. Question from Mateo.
Okay.
Hello, Vincent and Charles. I hope you fine gents are having a great day, and I will include you both in my daily prayers. I also would like to thank Charles for his recommendation of the book called Apologia. How do you say it? Apologia
Pro Vita Sua.
Yeah, by St. John Henry Newman. It is a fantastic read so far. I have a question for Mr. Charles about King Henry VII, father of King Henry VIII. I couldn't find much on him. What was his reign as king like, and his relations with Rome? Has there ever been any miracles associated to him? Found out recently that St. John Fisher gave him last rites.
Well, let's see. He did, in fact, get the last rites. There are no prayers associated with him. No one has ever considered Henry VII a candidate for sainthood. He was the fellow who defeated Richard III at Bosworth Field and became king. He was the first of the House of Tudor. But he was a devout Catholic. He was certainly never gave up the faith. He wasn't like his son. And interestingly enough, he did push for the canonization of his predecessor, Henry VI, who was a very saintly man. He was not a very able king, but he was a very saintly man. And he was the founder of both Eton College in England and King's College, Cambridge, famous centuries later for the lessons and carols at Christmas time. Henry VII married a Yorkist princess. Some believe that he was actually responsible for the death of the two young sons of Edward IV and not their uncle Richard III. Just as there's a Richard III society that's dedicated to redeeming Richard III's reputation, historical reputation, there is a Henry VII Society that functions very much the same way. If you look them up online, Henry VII Society, you'll find them. He was, when he became king, the treasury was almost empty because of the Wars of the Roses and the ongoing struggles for 50 years. So he became most famous for refinancing the country, for amassing money. And by the time he died, he left the country on a firm financial foundation. The other thing he did that should be of some interest to people in North America is that he was the one who sent John and Sebastian Cabot, Giovanni and Sebastiano Caboto, the Italian sailors, to North America, 1497. So that was the beginning of Britain's claims in Canada. Although, obviously, that was long before Queen Elizabeth sent Raleigh to North Carolina, or James I had Jamestown settled.
Okay. Question from Mason. Mr. Franchini and Mr. Coulombe, first of all, I would like to express my condolences over the death of Professor Kierkegaard. By mentioning her, you were able to get many people to pray for her.
Which I'm grateful for, I can tell you. She was a great lady, and it was an honor to know her, to be taught by her for the period that I was. She's very much missed.
That actually reminds me, I have a prayer request for everyone, if it'd be so kind. Please keep my mom in your prayers. Patricia Franchini is her name. She's 81 years old, and she had hip surgery hip replacement in November 2019. So she spent all of 2020 recovering. I think like October 2020, she fell just a little bit, and it kind of messed up her hip. A little piece of bone came off, and then it attached itself to a different place in the hip, and she's been having a tremendous amount of pain. Finally figured it out, and they're going to do big-time surgery on Tuesday. And I'm really on pins and needles about it. I'm really stressed out about it, because the doctor, they always make a big deal, try to discourage these sorts of things so that you can acknowledge all the risks of what might happen, So I would really scare that she's going to die on the table, but I don't know. You just got to leave these sorts of things in God's hands, but I would really appreciate if everyone pray for her. So,
And I'll second that emotion.
Yeah. Okay. So Mason's question. I have a question about positivism. At church, I recently heard a sermon from an intelligent priest who I do not mean to criticize with this question, about all the good the Catholic Church does in the world. It was said in response to criticism by many in the secular media who constantly disparaged the Church. However, I could not help but remember that Charles Marat in Ancien Regime was condemned for a positivist view of the faith and was wondering where the line is drawn between when it is okay and when it is not. How has church teaching changed on positivism in the past 100 years? Lastly, what are your personal views on it?
Well, firstly, we should remember about L'Action Française that condemnation was lifted as the very first thing he did as Pope by Pius XII, without anybody being asked to recant anything. But Charles Maurras' error, if you will, in a positivistic sense, was that number one, he was not, for most of his career, although he came back to the church about 5 years before he died, he was not what you would call a real believer, although the vast majority of his followers were. And basically, he saw the importance of the faith as being an expression of the eternal spirit of France, as of course the reverse is true. France is important to the degree that it reflects the faith. But this, when you're dealing with nationalists from countries that are very heavily Catholic, like France or Spain or Italy or Poland or wherever, some of their nationalists will tend to make that particular error, which is also an error that you'll find on the part of some of the Slavophiles in Russia and so on, and Serbia. The idea being that orthodoxy is important because it epitomizes the spirit of the Russians, the Serbs, the Bulgars, the Romanians, rather than the other way around. The problem with positivism per se is when it makes the practical worldly results of something more important than its spiritual reality. And obviously, one can't help but oppose that. You see an echo of it, in a sense, in the Americanist heresy, where it was said that the active virtues are better or superior to the contemplative virtues, whereas the truth is the other way around. But obviously, I'm not a great fan of positivism. It can be useful, as perhaps with your priest friend, in terms of evangelization when you're dealing with particular audiences. Because one thing you've got to remember when you evangelize is that you've got to talk to your non-Catholic audience in terms that they'll understand about things that they have some connection to. If you're talking to a bunch of scientists, there's no point starting out with how the church started and protected the Bible. On the other hand, if you're talking to a bunch of evangelicals, there's no point starting out with how the church was actually the patron of science. You know, it's not going to help. You need to start at where people are. And so today, people tend not to believe in much of anything. And they need to see that supernatural belief does indeed have an effect on natural world behavior. But that approach cannot be an end in itself.
I watched a long time ago on C-SPAN. I watched Tony Blair, your bud, debate an atheist and the prompt was, is the Catholic Church was it a force for good in the world? And Tony Blair takes a positivist approach, and he got destroyed.
Well, I'm sure he did, because he's a boob.
Yeah.
I mean, if Tony Blair argued in defense of the sky being blue, he'd probably be beaten. You know, I mean, that doesn't signify. But I can understand why he would take that approach if you're dealing with an atheist.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, basically, arguing with an atheist is like arguing with a blind man about red.
Mm.
You know, how do you do that?
It's true.
Well, I've never seen red. Well, yeah, you're blind. Yeah, so what? If red were real, I'd have seen it. Sir, you can't see anything. You're blind. That's what you say. I don't know that you can, what you call see. How do I know that you're not making all this up? What proof do I have that you actually have this thing you call sight?
Yeah, it's kind of skewed because it's arguing over what is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you can't count baptism, you can't count a whole lot of things, right?
No, well, I mean, you have to leave out escaping hell and going to heaven.
Yeah.
So it's a bit skewed.
Oh. But anyhow, yeah, so positivism, um, let's see. How has church teaching changed on positivism in the past 100 years?
It hasn't changed, but as I say, there have been attempts to bring it in. Americanism comes to mind, modernism, and so on. But as with your priest friend, it certainly is used more as a tool today than it used to be, simply because the total tone of society is more atheistic and more positivist than it was 100 years ago. And of course, there's a fine line between taking a tack that your audience will understand and capitulating.
Right. Question from Robert. Greetings, gentlemen. I have a question for Charles regarding the Ancien Regime of the Kingdom of France.
Should I put on my periwig and my knee breeches and my buckled shoes? Or is this okay?
No, we'll wait.
Well, I'm afraid I've sent them all out to be cleaned.
Yeah. All right. That'd be pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I thought so.
That'd be a good Halloween. That'd be a good Halloween.
That's true.
Yeah.
Halloween's coming.
All right. How did it work from the Middle Ages to the Reign of Terror, and why do some writers and modern historians critique it as the primary cause for the French Revolution? It seems to me that the Ancien Regime was a complex social system and not just a system of government. But it is hard for me to classify it as merely feudalism, as there seem to be various independent institutions in the French state, aside from the crown, the peers, and the church. As always, God bless you, the Book Baron, and all of Tumbler House.
Well, firstly, it's important to bear in mind that feudalism, so-called, was famous for the proliferation of intermediate institutions. You know, from the king and his court all the way down to the lowest village. You had all sorts of mediating institutions in between the top and the bottom. In France, what characterized the Ancien Regime of the 18th century was that while it had a feudal background, starting in the 17th century with Louis XIV, there was an increasing centralization of France. So you'd have this weird proto-centralized state resting on top of a still basically feudal body. But the centralization had the effect in many areas of depriving the local nobility, etc., of their leadership, because more and more people of that class wanted to be in Versailles to dance attendance upon the king, rather than running their own estates. And it's interesting that the heartlands of the counter-revolution in France, like the Vendée, but not just the Vendée, were characterized to a great degree by nobility who fought against the fashion and tended to prefer to stay on their own estates and not to go to the court. Many people, including people like de Maistre and de Bonald, who were certainly no friends of the revolution, did, however, see in the centralization efforts of the Bourbon kings the roots of the revolution, because they felt that the stronger the central government had become, the weaker the provinces. And they felt that had the provinces been what they had been, the revolution would never have gotten out of Paris. So, there you go.
Question from Laramie. God, it appears, has utilized the European branch of the Japhetite to spread the gospel throughout the world. Our Lord did not choose the Han dynasty of China, tribes in South America, nor kingdoms in Africa. For whatever reason, God chose Rome. This appears to be, among many things, a political decision. Do you suppose he made this decision because the Mediterranean culture, the Roman Empire, and European culture would be the most conducive to spreading Christianity? Do you feel that God intentionally includes himself in history in such a specific way?
In a word, yes. But of course, it's a bit the way it is with us as individuals. In other words, he has a mission for each of us. Now, whether we go along with it or not, we will nevertheless serve a given role. Now, if we don't go along with it, we won't benefit from it. If we do, we shall. To take an example from The Lord of the Rings, Gollum was the one who accomplished the quest. Frodo failed. But Gollum did so for his own selfish ends and destroyed himself. In all likelihood, went to hell, but he saved the world. And similarly, Western culture was all the things you say, but not because Europeans were inherently superior. It's simply that for various reasons, they had cooperated, shall we say, to some degree with the graces they received. And in so doing, created a backdrop in which it was easiest for the faith to grow. I'm reminded of St. Francis Xavier, who, when he went to Japan, he was preaching the faith, and a bunch of Japanese said to him, well, wait a minute. If what you're saying is true, what you're saying is that all of our fathers are in hell. And St. Francis Xavier responded, let me ask you a question. If I had come here a century ago, would your fathers have listened to me? And Japan was in a period of civil war at that time, and they said, well, certainly not. Everything was going well then. And St. Francis Xavier says, well, there you go. That's the point. I'm here now for you, because now is the time that you'll listen to me. Let the dead bury their dead. You're the ones on whom everything depends. Well, as it happened, of course, the Japanese leadership, a generation after that, destroyed the church in Japan to the degree that they could, although it survived underground. So Japan did not become the great vessel of the faith that it could have become had things been different. Mutatis mutandis, in China, in the late 17th, early 18th centuries, there was an emperor who was on the verge of converting. He actually wrote Catholic poetry because of the work of the Jesuits. But the Dominicans got very upset and jealous, and they had what was called the Chinese rites controversy. The Pope ruled against the Jesuits, and the Emperor decided against becoming a Catholic. And then, of course, many years later in the 20th century, Pius XI decided that the Chinese rites had actually been okay. So, had the Emperor of China converted at that time and had the Chinese rites been adopted, China today might very well be a great Catholic nation, in which case the whole history of the world would be different.
What is it about pre-Christian European culture, pre-Christian Rome, that makes it more conducive to spreading Christianity as compared to the Han Dynasty, tribes in South America, which, to their credit, once they encountered Christianity, they converted.
Mm-hmm. But it helped that the Spanish were there to defeat them militarily.
That's very true. Okay.
Well, several things. Firstly, the development of Greek philosophy provided a means whereby the faith could be explained. Its prevalence throughout the Roman world as opposed to the Greek world, and the ease of travel that Rome made. I mean, you could go from Palestine to Britain relatively quickly, relatively easy, relatively safely. That was something unparalleled up till that point in the history of the world. And so, after our Lord died and the apostles went out, those who went to Persia and India and Ethiopia, they made a good deal of progress, but nothing like those who went west. And in Rome itself, you had two classes that were really ready for the message. The old nobility, who found the faith attractive because it gave a spiritual warrant for their attempts to, their ancestors' attempts to hold on to the so-called Roman virtues, and the slaves of Rome, the very bottom, to whose lives it gave meaning and value. And from these two centers at the opposite ends of the social spectrum, the faith spread. So, but again, had for whatever reason, the right people refused, it wouldn't have worked out that way. And we see in our own time, the progressive loss of the faith has also led to a progressive cheapening of our culture. You know, you hear people whining about how we can't produce beauty anymore. Well, you can't have beauty without truth, and we've turned our back on that. And you certainly can't have goodness without truth and beauty.
You know, it's funny because I'm in the book world, and, you know, truth is important and goodness is important. But it's really the lack of beauty that actually gets me more than anything, because I think with truth, things are so complicated, you know, mapping things out, all the different noise, all the different critical thinking and logic involved in weighing different things. But with beauty, I don't feel that you have that same impediment. It's such a simple decision that to recognize that face tattoos aren't beautiful. And
well,
the like.
Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, if you look at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, you'll say, oh, that's beautiful. If you look at the Cathedral of Our Lady, Queen of the Angels in Los Angeles.
Go on.
What?
Wait, were you going to finish that thought?
No.
Oh. But...
No, but what I will say is that the man who claimed that cathedral incarnates his spirit in stone is not a man renowned for his adherence to truth.
Right. Yeah, they're related. Absolutely.
Related.
The good, the truth, and the beautiful. And the connection, if you don't adhere to the truth, there's going to be a disconnect to beauty as well. That's what happens.
Yeah. And of course, goodness goes out the window.
But, you know, beauty, it's also more interesting because it can be a tool for evangelization, too. Because people don't think on those terms where you can promote something beautiful and that people aren't thinking, whoa, this guy's trying to push religious stuff on me. You know?
No, like, and beauty has a sort of visceral attraction. Unless you're corrupted and are, I don't know, a cardinal of the church, you have a visceral attraction to beauty. Now, if you don't, if you have an attraction to ugliness, if you like lumpish, stupid architecture, say, or lumpish, stupid art, chances are you're kind of lumpish and stupid yourself in some way.
Chances are. All right. Question from Jason.
Okay.
Question for Charles. Hello, Don Franchini and Sir Charles. I'm currently reading Professor Biersack's The Endless Knot, which I purchased along with Puritan's Empire using $5 off for reviewing a book on TumblrHouse.com and free shipping for the order being over $25. Not an actor, no CODs, while supplies last. And yes, I was the first on my block.
Wow. Did he get it thrown through his window, tied to a brick?
Perhaps, but we can only guess. See, this is a veteran question right here. You can tell this person is a veteran of the show. He knows how to get his question asked promptly. And
It's true.
so
And he accepts no CODs.
that's right. That's very important. So just for everyone who wants their question asked, this is what you want to model your question off of right here. Okay. So he goes on to say, in it, Father Baptist instructs Martin Feeney to pray to the archangels, and he includes Saint Uriel. I had thought the church had only recognized 3 named angels, being Saint Michael, Saint Gabriel, and Saint Raphael. So I assume he's venerated in the Eastern rites. Please tell us what you know about Saint Uriel, his feast day, tradition, and folklore, where the name comes from, and what he's the patron of, and what Eastern churches venerate him.
That's a lot. I mean, a lot. In case you were wondering.
While you're looking it up, I'll just say Saint Uriel is really one of our most popular questions for the show. People seem to be really... This is like the 3rd time we've taken a Saint Uriel question in the history of the show, I think.
That is for sure. The one thing I want to look up, it's light of God. Uriel means light of God.
So, is he in the Bible?
Well, no. He's in some of the apocryphal books. The Book of Enoch, for instance, talks about him. He is venerated by all of the Eastern rites of the church, many of whom also venerate 3 others and give them names, which we're not supposed to do. We Latins, I mean. But Uriel, his feast day is November the 8th.
That's a familiar date in my mind.
It's the day John F. Kennedy was elected president.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Wait. There wasn't anything else on that day, was there?
Well, it's the big feast day of St. Michael as well on the.
That's right.
The Eastern calendar.
That's it.
And it's the feast day of the 4 crown martyrs. Blessed Duns Scotus.
That's right.
It was also on the 8th of November. And...
is there something else?
There is one other little thing.
What's the little thing?
Well, last November 8th was the 60th anniversary of the birth of an infant at Doctors Hospital in Manhattan on the day John F. Kennedy was elected. There was silence in heaven. And silence in the maternity ward of Doctors Hospital. And not too far away from that maternity ward, Marilyn Monroe was in the hospital as well. Because in those days, Doctors Hospital was considered the hospital to the stars in New York. And that is where I was born. November the 8th, 1960. Also the feast of all the saints of England and all the saints of Wales.
Wow.
But Uriel, in some traditions, is considered the particular patron of confirmation. The Anglicans are fond of him for some reason. There is an accredited Catholic organization in Germany, a home missionary group, that is to say, Germans who've dedicated themselves to trying to evangelize Germany for the Catholic faith. And it is called the Societas Urielis, the Uriel Society. There's devotion to him in certain parts of Spain. And interestingly enough, back in the 1600s, a friar had a vision of him who asked him to build a church. Well, that church was built with papal approbation on the basis of this vision from St. Uriel. The church is called Santa Maria degli Angeli e Martiri, St. Mary of the Angels and the Martyrs. And it is renowned as being the special church of the House of Savoy, the royal house of Italy. And it was the scene of their last several weddings. So
I'm trying to map out the beginning of Saint Uriel in church tradition. So you say he was in apocryphal writings.
Yeah, and in the Old Testament as well.
Oh, where in the Old Testament? Well,
Not in the canonical books that we accept. But he was in the Book of Enoch, as I say,
okay.
which the Ethiopians accept as canonical.
But wouldn't there have to be some sort of ruling from a pope to sort of?
Well, as I say, there's been papal toleration of his cultus, which has not been the case, to my knowledge, with the other three. But as I say, you'll remember there's 7 archangels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael. Uriel is considered in a lot of sources. And then there are the other 3, which will get many varying names: Jeremiel, Raguel, Shealtiel. But those listings vary from place to place. And there are labeled statues of all 7 archangels in different parts of Central Europe. Again, permitted by ecclesiastical approbation. But as a rule, the church is kind of iffy about the other 3. Uriel is somewhat better positioned. But of course, the best are the 3 who are mentioned in canonical scripture. I'll say the best, I mean the best attested to is the best way to put it.
Okay, our final question for this episode is from Robert.
All right.
Good day, Mr. Coulombe and Mr. Franchini. I had a question regarding a figure known as Saint Expeditus. I have heard conflicting information on whether or not Saint Expedite ever existed or if he was fabricated in the 18th century. Additionally, while I was researching him, I stumbled upon his cult, which seems to go way beyond veneration. Self-proclaimed sorcerers and witches claiming that they know spells to call upon Saint Expedite to bring people material goods quickly. I find all of this quite perplexing. My question is twofold. Is Saint Expeditus a recognized saint by the Catholic Church? If so, what is the proper way to venerate him? Thank you and God bless.
Okay, well, to answer your question, he is a real saint. Oddly enough, my paternal grandfather's middle name was Expedi, after Saint Expeditus. While he was a Roman soldier, I believe, a military martyr, and his cultus goes a long way back. But a sort of folk legend developed in New Orleans that he wasn't real, that someone had sent a statue of a Roman soldier to New Orleans. Expedite had put on the box, and so it was decided this was Saint Expeditus. Well, that's not true. He's a real saint with a real cultus in Europe. The sorcerer thing doubtless also comes from New Orleans and Latin America, where a lot of saints are used by sorcerers and obeah men and
what's the perversion
voodoo.
called? Is that
What's that?
What's the perversion of Christianity down in that neck of the woods called?
Santeria.
Santeria, yeah.
Obeah, voodoo, where they tend to identify saints with certain pagan gods, specifically African. Saint John Baptiste, for instance, Saint John the Baptist becomes Baron Samedi, who is the voodoo god of death. They do this with a lot of the saints, Saint Martin, Saint Lazarus, and so on. But that, of course, does not make them any less saints.
Right.
So it's the same with Saint Expedite. And as I say, that was my grandfather's middle name. And you must understand that the French Canadians are not the Louisiana French.
That's for sure.
That's true. We're much colder.
That's for sure.
We don't have a lot of black blood.
Yes. Okay.
We don't make gumbo.
You like gumbo, though.
I love gumbo, and I make it myself.
Yeah.
But it's not a French-Canadian national dish.
Yeah.
You don't see the French Canadians playing around with okra and sassafras filet and that kind of thing. And they don't go in for really spicy food in Quebec.
Yeah, I think I like French Canadian food more. I like that. Oh, what's the
You like poutine.
I like poutine. There we go. I
You
like
like
it.
French fries covered with gravy and cheese and
Oh,
God knows what else.
so good. I had it in Alhambra a year ago with the Knights of Columbus, and it was good.
It's actually, poutine is actually a fairly recent addition. It only goes back to Expo 67.
Well,
But it is good. It is good. But speaking of that, that was our last question.
last question.
Well, I've got some things I have to point out having to do with the calendar.
Very good.
The first is that in real time, when we're doing this show, it's Saturday night. Now, the Saturday before Pentecost in the Byzantine calendar is the most prominent. They have several others of the year, but this is the biggest of what they call Souls Saturdays. This is a day that they pray for the dead. They make special foods for the dead. It's their version of All Souls in the Latin rite. And I went to a Byzantine liturgy this morning, and afterwards they had a special prayer service for the dead, and it was very, very inspiring. It's also the Vigil of Pentecost. And in the pre-55 rite of the Latin rite, it was like a somewhat abbreviated version of the Holy Saturday Vigil, complete with, I think, 6 instead of 12 prophecies and a blessing of the baptismal font. Now, interestingly enough, that was gotten rid of after 55, but it was revived in the Novus Ordo as an alternative. So priests were using the so-called ordinary form. If they want, they could do a proper Pentecost Vigil Mass tonight in Latin or English. Tomorrow is Pentecost. And that, remember, ladies and gentlemen, is the third of the 3 great feasts after Christmas and Easter. And our medieval ancestors kept it quite as solemnly and as filled with customs as they did Christmas and Easter.
Yeah, I think superfan Marianne, one of the patrons, I think she tried to slip in a question on Pentecost customs, traditions.
Well, you can either eat pork or poultry, for one thing.
Who does that?
The Germans like pork. And then a lot of other peoples like poultry because it's the idea of the Holy Ghost, as a bird.
Okay.
Another thing that they would do is in the churches, they would drop things from the roof, from the ceiling, to commemorate the falling of the Holy Ghost. Well, there's several things they would do. At one point, they would use burning brands, but that was difficult because the flames, the tongues of fire.
Yeah.
Problem with that is that you can get people burned. So in other places, they would dump rose petals, red rose petals, to represent them. For not very long, in a few places, they would release doves in the church. But there's a problem with doing that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Oh, well, I'll bet you can. Just go look at a statue in the park, and you'll find out.
Okay.
Find out what the results were from that. So they didn't last very long, nor in many places, but they did try it. But Pentecost, King Arthur, of course, always kept court at Pentecost, and the Holy Grail appeared when they were having Pentecost. He was crowned on Pentecost.
Wow.
And so many of the Arthurian stories start out with King Arthur kept Pentecost, or kept Whitsun, which is the English phrase, at Camelot or at Caerleon or at Carlisle or wherever it happened to be, at Winchester. The other thing is that, like Christmas and Easter, the following 2 days were originally also holy days of obligation. So you had Whit Sunday, Whit Monday, and Whit Tuesday. Places like in Europe and Latin America that retain a certain amount of Catholic influence in their public life retain Whit Monday, although no longer Whit Tuesday, as a holiday. And I think it was only Benedict the 15th that got rid of Whit Monday and Whit Tuesday as holy days of obligation. So tomorrow is May 24th. So in addition to being, not tomorrow, I'm sorry, Monday when people are going to be seeing this, it will be Whit Monday. And so you should keep your Pentecost celebration going on. But it's two other important days as well. May 24th is the Feast of Our Lady Help of Christians, patroness of, among other places, of Australia and China. Now, if you go online, you'll find the prayer that Pope Benedict XVI composed for the church in China to be recited on May 24th. Let me recommend highly that you find it and you pray it when you watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, Pope Francis and the current Holy See, having sold the church in China down the river, are not very interested in praying for it. But not having done so, Benedict was, and I think it's a custom we should keep up. It's a beautiful prayer. China is a wonderful country, and Lord knows the church in China needs all the help she can get, what with having been betrayed by Rome and stuff. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, I guess it's kind of a badge of honor in a way. But it's something else. In the Anglosphere, outside the United States, it was traditionally Empire Day.
Oh.
Yes, indeed. May 24th was the birthday of Queen Victoria. And so, starting in the latter part of her reign as Empire Day. And this was a day when Britain and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and India and Malta and Malaysia and all the far-flung parts of the empire celebrated their imperial unity. Libertas et Imperium, liberty and empire.
Is this a real celebration, or is this like a fake celebration like Law Day and Loyalty Day?
No. This was really, really celebrated. They'd have pageants and parades across the British Empire. It was a big, big deal. And then after World War II, it became Commonwealth Day and was successfully less celebrated. And then to break it free of its colonial connections, they moved Commonwealth Day to some other day, a month before, a month after. So on Commonwealth Day today, the Queen goes to Westminster Abbey, and usually she's accompanied by the governors general and or high commissioners of the different Commonwealth countries. There's a special service, and she gives a speech which is televised like her Christmas speech. But for those of us who remember Empire Day, we remember. One
right.
flag, one navy, one queen, one empire.
That's good.
Makes you proud.
What are you going to do to celebrate Empire Day?
I will wear a Union Jack on my lapel pin, on my lapel.
Okay.
And there's more, because not only is it Empire Day, but we are coming face to face. It may actually be Memorial Day in the United States, which is the last Monday in May.
Yeah, that's going to be May 31st. That'll be next episode.
May 31st. All right. So the next episode, we'll be doing Memorial Day for the States. You see, ladies and gentlemen, how eclectic we are. You see, you've got to understand that Off the Menu has a multinational audience. In our way, we are sort of a United Nations of the airwaves, reaching people across the globe, regardless of national frontier, color, creed, gender, IQ, Well, we don't demand any of those things from our staff, so why should we demand them out of our audience? Anyway, let's just say that it's one of the things I enjoy about doing the show, is knowing that I'm in a position to insult and annoy people of all nationalities. That it doesn't have to be reserved just for one. No, seriously. So May is going to, we have one more week of May when you see this, and then we'll be getting ready for June and summer. And the wheel of the year will turn again. I'm looking forward to the possibility of coming home in late June, early July. And if so, then we'll do a certain number of these from the dear old Tumbler House Tower studio.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. And that will mean we'll be able to revert to an old ritual. Pre-show donut.
You'll be able to. I've been upholding that tradition rigorously.
See, we don't get donuts over here, ladies and gentlemen. We do have Dunkin' Donuts actually, but they don't really. The flour is different or something. I don't know what it is. They don't taste the same. But having discovered an authentic Mexican restaurant today was a real good thing.
You're getting too much. Yeah, I kind of am a little uncomfortable because you're sort of getting your fix over there. It's like, well, okay, I'm getting the Mexican food. I got my little Musso and Frank's book, so I don't need to go to Los Angeles to see Musso and Frank's anymore. I don't need to go to California to get a good Mexican restaurant. I kind of don't like these little substitutes that are happening over in Austria while that sort of Austro-fascist propaganda is sort of, that poison is seeping into your mind.
Do you hear yourself?
I do hear myself.
All right. Firstly, that's ridiculous.
What part?
All right. All of it. Secondly, I'll have you know that on the basis of my experience, I was a guest at the gala opening of the first Norms here in Vienna.
Are you serious? When did that happen?
Just 2 weeks ago.
The first Norms in...
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know Norms was international like that.
This is the first one outside of California.
Are you serious? This isn't a joke, right?
And in 2 weeks' time, they're going to be opening up a hat.
No.
You know, the hat.
Just no. No, they're not. There is no Norms in Vienna. That's fake news.
Do you hear yourself?
There is no In and Out in Vienna. That's
well. They're opening after the hat.
No, you will forever be deprived of these things as long as you're in Vienna. That's your punishment.
All right, fine. Would you believe I've been sent a detailed history of the hat?
Okay, sure.
And I'm being sent the Norms cookbook as we speak. No, you shouldn't be too worried. I'm sure I'll come home at some point, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't stay here forever despite the job offers.
You're getting job offers over there? No, you're not. Are you?
Yeah.
You're freelance, though.
I know, but I've just been offered a gig with the European Conservative, which will pay me nicely, in euros. My hedge against inflation.
Well, okay.
It's all right. I'm sure I'll have reasons to come back occasionally. It's got to happen sooner or later. I mean, look, I've still got a house there.
I'm going to speak for your entire American and Canadian constituency and say we feel really unloved right now. That you don't need us.
Do you hear yourself?
I'm representing right now. I'm preaching gospel right now.
All right, let me tell you something. I will never forget where I've come from. So I've been invited to Clarence House by the Prince of Wales for the weekend. Do you think that changes how I feel about my country? The fact that I've been offered an official position in France? Do you think that that is going to minimize to the slightest bit my loyalty?
Yes, I think it's impacting you. I think you've gotten too big for us. I mean, whatever happened to Hackensack, New Jersey? What happened
could get
to
a house in Hackensack. If that's moving up, then I'm moving out.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened to you.
No, not entirely. Let me just say this about that. All right, I got a letter from an old friend. We used to be real close. Who said he couldn't go on the American way. He quit his job, he sold the house, bought a ticket to the West Coast. Now he gives them a stand-up routine in L.A.
That's you. Oh,
what's that?
Man. That was basically you. That's like autobiographical right there. That's biographical for you.
Well, yeah, except I've come to Austria rather than the West Coast. Now,
You did some stand-up in L.A.
I sure did. So I got my start. Do you think I'll ever forget the Sunset Strip? You think I could ever forget late nights at Cantor's after the show? And all my cronies and me would be sitting there throwing booze back and laughing it up about life in the early 80s. Do you think I could ever forget that? No. The times we had. The Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory. Sushi on Sunset, pink tofu. Some things you want to forget. Tom Bergen's late at night. Nah, I can never forget that. I can never forget Musso's, the Dresden. Nah.
You can create more of those wonderful memories, Charles.
That's true. There are a lot of places here to do that. But, I mean...
That's nasty.
Sorry.
That's nasty.
No, listen. I'll be back. You know, in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. To my American and my Canadian constituents, let me say, as my late father always told me, always leave with one of them what brought you. That's right. The States and Canada were the start of my career, and they'll be the death of me. I mean, let me rephrase. And they'll be where at some point or other I'll end up. You'll see. If nothing else, my family plots in Massachusetts, so I have to come back sometime. Well, look at it this way. I have yet to find a Japanese restaurant that's quite like we've got back home. Chinese and Vietnamese, oh yeah, that we have over here very well. But Japanese is a lot harder because it's very subtle. You know what the restaurant I really want to try when I get home? Well, there are two.
What?
One is in Little Tokyo. It's called Aze, and it is the new restaurant by Chef Akira, who for years ran the Maison Akira in Pasadena. It was Franco-Japanese fusion. They're doing the same thing more cheaply in Little Tokyo. And so I'm keen on trying that. And then the other, and this I was really excited to find out about. There's a French-Canadian lady named Mimi Hébert, who for years had various French restaurants on the west side. Chez Hélène was the first, and then she had Chez Mimi in, I can't think of the area. You know, Saint Martin of Tours is there. It's where O.J. killed his wife.
Brentwood.
Yes. It was in Brentwood for a long time. But she closed about 10 years ago. And I tell you what, this lady, She was a real restaurateuse. Well, November of 2020, after 10 years in retirement and getting sick of being retired, 80 years old, in a wheelchair, she came out of retirement. And now she's going great guns at what she calls Petit Chez Mimi in Santa Monica. So that's the second place. I've got to get there. So I'll be back, God willing, in June, late June, early July.
Okay, well, let's hope so. So that will wrap it up. That will wrap things up for this episode. Wait a minute, I didn't ask you.
Ask me what?
What is it if it's Monday?
Oh, then I know this. This is ridiculous. Oh, I remember. It's off the menu.
Oh, well, what about the soul you save?
With any luck, it'll be your own.
Okay.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces. No?
That's fine. We like you
All
singing,
right.
Charles.
Fine. We'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen.
See ya.
God bless you, and don't try the mackerel on Friday.